Hey everyone, it's Tim from Linessa Farms, specialty in heirloom livestock. Thanks for joining us again today. So we've been talking a lot about bummer lambs and bummer goats, and now we want to get into colostrum, and we want to talk about why colostrum is so important to the overall health and well-being of your baby goats and your baby lambs. Stay tuned to find out why. If you're new to Linessa Farms, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. You can go on our website at www.linessafarms.com, and we have lots and lots of resources available for you. Just go to the upper right-hand corner, click on downloads, and see everything that we have. First and foremost, before we start talking about the babies, let's take some time to talk about the mothers. We're going to talk about passive immunity and active immunity. And when babies are born, they have what's called passive immunity that they get from their mom. Think of it as lending immunity to their offspring in order to protect them until they can develop their own immunity. And that's where the colostrum comes into play. Antibodies are gained by the mothers through vaccinations and just through life in general. Every time that those ewes or does have come into contact with a bacteria in their life or some kind of bug, they more than likely develop a natural immunity to it, and they will pass that on to their offspring. Likewise, when we give shots for things such as C, D, and T, various other things that we can give vaccinations for, that can get passed on as well. So basically everything that the ewe or doe has been exposed to, plus everything that we have vaccinated them against in the past, gets into their body develops antibodies, and then we pass that on to the offspring through the colostrum. So an antibody can also be referred to as an immunoglobulin, and we're not going to get in the deep weeds of this too much today, but I just want you to know, if you hear the term immunoglobulin, or if you read on a label and it says IG something, IgA, IgG, that's an immunoglobulin, but they're all the same for all intents and purposes as far as you need to know, and they're all antibodies. Antibodies are actually proteins. They're very specific proteins, and they're generally in the shape of a Y, and this goes into the body and helps to fight off bacteria and other bugs by training other cells to do the job that they need to do. A very interesting thing about antibodies: when jawed vertebrates are born, they all have a gland in their body that is called the thymus, and the thymus is kind of the antibody factory in your body. You're born with the thymus when you're little. The goats, the lambs, again, any jawed vertebrate has a thymus, and again, that thymus is what makes these antibodies. We think of it as the antibody factory. However, when a baby is first born, a baby lamb or a baby goat, they don't actually have any antibodies present in their body. They have to make them. And so to bridge this gap, in order to give them some antibody protection, the mother produces this first milk that's known as colostrum. Now, colostrum is rich in antibodies, very rich in antibodies, and basically any antibody that that mom has within reason is going to be passed on to that offspring. But they have to ingest the colostrum, and it's not enough for them to just ingest the colostrum. They have to ingest the colostrum at a very specific time and in a very specific window and in very specific amounts. And the way that that works is this: in all stomachs, including human stomachs and goat stomachs, sheep stomachs, we all have enzymes that are in there, and you don't need to know too much about enzymes other than the fact that enzymes are used to break things down, specifically to break down proteins in this case. So what would normally happen is, if I fed immunoglobulins or colostrum or anything to a lamb or a goat or a person, the enzymes in the stomach would break down that protein, because again, antibodies are simply proteins. It would break them down and destroy them. Antibodies are very large proteins, and it would break those proteins down into amino acids, and then the body reuses those amino acids to make other things. So that's kind of a problem, because if we feed antibodies to something, we obviously want them to be able to ingest them whole and not destroy them. And that's one of the miracles of life, is that for the first 24 hours of a lamb or a goat's life, they actually lack the enzymes that break down these proteins. So that's why you may see on packages, it will, especially these colostrum replacement packages, it'll say you have to feed this within the first 24 hours of life. And when we talk about general colostrum, we say you have to get this within the first 24 hours of life. And that's the reason why. After 24 hours, the lamb or the goat is going to develop these enzymes. And at that point, the colostrum is not going to offer very much antibody protection anymore, because those proteins are going to be destroyed. So it's something that I want you to keep in mind about the urgency of this and why it's very, very important to get these antibodies into these babies at birth. This also gives us a chance to focus back on the moms and realize why it's so important for us to vaccinate our moms. So we are on Patreon. Patreon is probably new to you. It is also new to me. If you enjoy the content that we produce and that we put out, this is a way for you to help sponsor us. As you can imagine, these videos and everything that we do take a lot of time and effort. I have a full-time job just like many of you do, so this is something that's done on my free time. Everything that we make from this will go directly into the channel, and by no means is anything going to change with our channel. This is just an option that you have. It's www.patreon.com/Linessa Farms. I know some of you are against vaccinating, but that vaccinating really supplies those babies with what they need until they can develop their own antibodies. Now, babies don't have any antibodies, and it takes a while for that thymus to get cooking and get working properly to where they can develop their own antibodies through the things that they experience out in nature. And so again, mom's going to lend these antibodies, and that's what we call passive immunity. They're passing on this immunity to these babies to use until they can develop their own antibodies. Once they develop their own, that's what we refer to as active antibody production. And again, that's done with the thymus. What happens when we have a healthy baby or healthy babies? Well, those babies are born, they drink mom's colostrum, and they take in those antibodies, hopefully. And we're gonna touch back on this in a moment, because there's a few interesting things that you may like to know. The big thing is what do we do about these bums? What do we do about these bummers that don't take in the colostrum that they need? Well, there's a few things that you can do. The best thing that you can do is actually get sheep or goat colostrum and get that to the baby through milking out their mom or milking out another animal and saving it and freezing it. Probably the second best thing you can do is talk to a local producer or a local veterinarian about getting cow colostrum. Cow colostrum works great as well. You can freeze colostrum in your freezer. You can store it for up to a year. When you bring it out, you can warm it back up. We just don't want to exceed about 105 degrees. You do not ever want to microwave this stuff, because when you microwave it, you essentially destroy the good benefits of having those antibodies in there. So if you are fortunate enough to have frozen colostrum off of another mom or off of a cow, you can freeze that for up to a year, and then you just want to warm it up, maybe in some warm water. I like to take mine and have it in a glass jar, and I put that glass jar inside of a pot of boiling water, just enough to get it to melt. And as soon as it melts and I check the temperature and it get up to about 100 degrees, I stop and I remove it. So that's something that you'll want to keep in mind. The next best thing that you can do is use one of the many powdered colostrum replacers that you can buy in any big box store. And most of these, although not all, contain immunoglobulins. And when you look on the back of the packages, it will actually say on the back of the package if it has immunoglobulins in there. And for instance, I'm looking at this package here. I believe this is from Tractor Supply, and it says globulin protein, 25 grams per pound. So I know that has immunoglobulins in it. I really like this stuff. This is a good replacement that you can pick up, I believe, on Premier. And this one is actually made from cow colostrum, so that one works great as well. Just make sure that it contains some kind of antibody if you're going to be feeding it to the babies. There are studies that show that babies need a lot of colostrum. So not only do you need to give them that initial feeding of colostrum, but throughout that entire first 24-hour period, all of those feedings will benefit that baby if they actually are colostrum. It develops more and more and more as they take in more and more colostrum. Mom's natural colostrum production will drop off over a 24 to 48 hour period, so the baby's actually getting less, but it's more beneficial every time that they get it, and that's what studies show. What happens if they don't get colostrum at all before that 24-hour period? Well, now you can be in some seriously deep trouble, because now you've got a baby that has no antibodies whatsoever, and many of these babies will get sick eventually and die from some sort of a bacterial infection that is almost impossible to control. So if you are going to buy a bottle baby, or if you have a bottle baby of your own, you always either want to make sure that you give it colostrum within the first 24 hours, or that the person that you've purchased it from has given it colostrum within the first 24 hours as well. If you miss the 24-hour window, I think it's very important, and I know the stuff is a little pricey and you're going to have to pay for airmail shipment because it needs to stay frozen, but you can get Ovshield. Ovshield you can buy on Premier's website. This is, no kidding, this is antibody serum that is made from healthy ewes. You can give it to goats as well. You can keep this in your fridge, and you can give a shot of this if you happen to fall outside of that 24-hour window. And I think that's really great, because there can possibly be some times where you may miss that 24-hour window for whatever reason. So think about the Ovshield. I think it's a great option. I have some on hand just in case. I rarely ever use it, but it never hurts. Now, the Ovshield has two directions on it. It has an oral administration route and an injection route. I believe the oral administration route is 10 milliliters. I believe the injection route is also 10 milliliters, but split up into two 5 milliliter injection sites. Again, if you're past that first 24-hour window, we're gonna wanna use the injection sites instead of the oral route. Here's a trick that you may not know that many professionals use. On many farms that raise lambs and raise goat kids, when the babies are born, you may have noticed this for yourself, that one of those babies is always stronger, one of those babies is always up first and nursing first. What can happen with that? Well, it's pretty obvious that that stronger or healthier baby or faster baby may potentially get the lion's share of the colostrum that mom is producing. That is a problem. So what we do, and what many people do, is if we have babies that are coming out of an animal that we know are going to show, or we just have the time to do it, we will actually take the twins, we will milk mom out ourselves, and we will equally split up that colostrum between the two babies, set them down, and let them go. That way we are 100% sure that both babies have got the colostrum that they need. We will normally tube this. We normally won't even mess around with putting it in a bottle. We'll just fill it up, we'll tube one, we'll tube the other, set them on the ground, and then let them go and let them nurse off of mom from there. They'll continue to get some colostrum within the next 24 hours, but this way we're sure it's even Steven and they're both off to a great start. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about more efficient ways to milk sheep and goats. As you know, this can be quite the Olympic sport, and it doesn't need to be. So check out our next video that will be coming out soon, and we're going to slowly progress. We're going to talk about how to get that colostrum or get that milk that you need if the baby's not able to get it on their own. I'm Tim from Linessa Farms, specialty in heirloom livestock. Thanks for joining us again today, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Squirrel hat, fish. I also like potato chips. I'm Tim from Linessa Farms, with weird pauses that make no sense.